Today I bring you a more casual video. Scripted ramblings, if you will. And yes, I am taking that from this video title I saw. I just think the phrase scripted ramblings really fits what I'm going for here. I wanted to talk about Persona 4, a game with a lot of hype surrounding it and why I didn't really jive with it. It's a game that very much uses its predecessor as a base, releasing only a couple of years after P3, but it's not like one of those identical sequels. It's more like what Fire Emblem Fates was to Awakening, but it kinda took away everything good about P3. P3 was very ambitious, so it had a lot of great ideas and a lot of huge flaws. The biggest example of both is the calendar system, which connects fantastically to the themes of P3 specifically, but is terrible in execution as it destroys the pacing of a game that already has almost no story. Guess what they kept in P4? P3 at least had some interesting mechanics, like the tactics system, stun locking, and the weapon system. Guess what mechanics they removed in P4? It doesn't have the good plots of P3, nor does it have the stylishness and fun of P5. Unlike both of those two, the story sucks. Speaking of, let's get down to business. I think a lot of people, including P4 fans, would understand what I mean when I say that Persona 4's story does not get good until the 6th story arc, out of like 7 arcs. The first 5 arcs follow a repetitive and not very fleshed out structure that isn't even good the first time. You see someone's silhouette on TV, you find out who the person is, you go into the TV and find their dungeon. The dungeon has a skin that visually represents their problem in a shallow manner. There's some boring, droning music, you hear some dialogue about that one note and stereotypical problem. You go through the dungeon, the person meets their shadow and denies that it's them. The shadow turns it into a monster and a boss fight ensues. The music is like you beat the heck out of the shadow, which somehow causes the person to go from complete denial to instant acceptance via literal magic, and the music is now a sad piano and it goes like repeat. You know, here's something funny. The shadow is supposed to be the true self, right? And okay, please don't kill me for this, just bear with me. But what about Kanji and Naoto? They're like not actually supposed to be gay and trans, right? So the shadow is meant to be a caricature of the perceived self or something. Then doesn't that mean the game is just inconsistent with how it handles the shadows? According to Jungian psychology, I think the shadow is supposed to be like repressed desires and stuff. So with this perspective, Naoto is actually a trans man and she's repressing that. But if I say that, then I'm an annoying Tumblr user. Regardless, you don't need to know anything about Jung to see that the game itself does not know for sure what the shadows are or what their role in the story is, so the portrayal of these characters in the main story falls apart as a result. I'm about to talk about spoilery topics, so just skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid that. The story does eventually get good. The plot starts to really pick up when Naotame is introduced. Involving Nanako and Dojima and their conflict creates personal stakes and leads to emotionally charged moments that are actually pretty well written, and shockingly, even sequences that are well paced. The piano version of I'll Face Myself works really well here. The part where the game asks the player to actually figure out who the real culprit is a nice touch. Adachi is also a genuinely great character and one of the better villains I've seen in an Atlas game. Nevertheless, in each arc, you're running through possibly the worst dungeons I have seen in a video game. Besides the music and visuals being uninspired and the worst in SMT, the dungeon design is somehow worse than P3. Tartarus had some interesting mechanics like the unique option to allow your party members to explore by themselves, but the simple procedural generation made the dungeon crawling bad over time. In P4, they did the same thing, but now all the dungeons are straight corridors and there's nothing mechanically interesting at all. What's more, the combat is terrible. Knockdowns in P4 were made way less interesting by removing their turn cancelling feature. This was very powerful, but gave the player a way to engage more deeply with the mechanics. You can stun lock enemies in P3, but doing so requires you to make use of the wait command as not to knock the enemy back up, forcing you to think about turn order, to choose your action carefully, and engage with the tactics system. P4's knockdowns primarily just reward the player for clicking a weakness. The addition of the dizzy element is nice though, as it gives the player a reason to hit downed enemies. Balancing is one of the culprits of the poor quality of combat. Tactical prowess doesn't matter so much as numbers do, due to what feels like extremely harsh level scaling and the prevalence of AoE physical spam as an answer to most enemies in the game. Many enemies have gimmick-based resistances, which is a nice idea, but in practice boils down to resulting in railroading the player into simply clicking a specific skill and removing the option for strategic expression. All of this occurs while hearing the same battle theme and boss theme for almost the entire game. They're great the first time you hear them, and painfully annoying the 100th, a problem that extends to the songs used in the social sim part of the game. P4 also removed the weapon system from P3. Each weapon type in P3 dealt one of 3 different types of physical damage. When you combine this with the fact that Makoto could use any weapon type, and with the existence of special weapon attributes like ailments or increased crits, you got a combat system in which switching your weapon or party members and using your weapon were relevant strategic choices which added to player expression. None of this is true in P4. Weapons are mostly close to irrelevancy besides passive stat bonuses, though whilst the game might be mechanically lacking in this regard, it does at least gain some charm as a small upside. By removing P3's weapon system, P4 allows itself to do something fun. Each character's weapon gets to be whatever the game wants, like how Yosuke uses dual blades, and Kanji uses a freaking chair or other plate-shaped objects. And besides the novelty, this also leads to more unique persona summoning animations that show off the personality of each character. The characters of Persona 4 are one of the most praised aspects of the game. I've already made clear why I think the main story doesn't effectively characterize the party members, but a big part of the appeal for a lot of people is the social link mechanic. Unfortunately, I don't think this mechanic works in any game. In some regards, it can be compared to Fire Emblem's support mechanic, and it suffers from a lot of the same flaws too. Social links having to be written with the fact that they could be occurring at any point in the story in mind means that they often end up being centered around uninteresting topics. Even in Chie's final rank, you end up just trading with her like normal. And any character growth in social links is never represented in the main story. There is some good writing in here somewhere though. I think they had some things to say with Rise. I like the part about accepting that different sides of yourself all a part of you and how you can't live as separate people. I think one of my biggest problems with social links is how they're paced. Every single social link is forced to have 10 ranks, no more, no less. In most cases, I think this is far too many. Each SL is forced to be drawn out as a result. Fire Emblem supports demonstrate how this can be done better. In 3 Houses, for example, most support chains are around 3 conversations long, and each of these are used to sufficiently flesh out any given character dynamic. But the game doesn't force itself to do 3 every time. Sometimes there are only 2, or 4 or 5 in a single chain. Different support chains and different SLs need different numbers of conversations. But it's not just the social links that suffer from slow pacing. Indeed, this is by far the most prevalent issue of the modern Persona games, and 4 is no exception. The story is already bad in the first 5 arcs even without the calendar system, but it's made worse by the fact that the player essentially has to wait between instances of anything actually happening in the plot. This is a flaw that encroaches most of the course of these games, and I think it would be most effective if I went into more detail in a dedicated P3 video that I probably won't make anytime soon, but I will finish this section with this. The music for the daily social sim stuff is pretty good. I like how it reflects the mood of the weather. The game caps off with an underwhelming finale. If that wasn't enough of a warning that I'm about to talk about a spoiler topic again, take this as your warning to click off now, as the spoilers will remain until the end of the video. The elusiveness of the true ending is a nice touch and connects to the themes of the game. Besides that, it's bad. The game is all like, hey, I'm the gas station attendant who you had a handshake with at the beginning of the game. Remember me? No, well it turns out I was Izanami this whole time, and now you have to fight me for some reason. Like, bro, I get that this is all part of the Shinto mythology retelling, but this barely connects to the story of the rest of the game at all. The dungeon is more procedural generation with boring skin and nothing burger music. The boss itself has a cool design, but besides that, a stat competition gameplay like normal, weak music and bad atmosphere. The final hit with Izanagi no Okami is way less hype than P3 or 5. All in all, I think that Persona 4 is a pretty bad game, and I don't know how to end this video, but fortunately the format of lower effort than usual scripted ramblings allows me to pass this off as just part of this video's particular style. I started writing a bunch of comparative essays, and then not finishing them. I never expected to finish this before finishing any of those. And also, by the way, all of them partly or primarily feature Megami Tensei. I guess we're just slowly turning into a Mega 10 channel.